Hmm? Ah!
There's been some nudity. There's been lots of illegal drugs, like just weird, like because lots of landlords would do this for like 50 houses that they own, kind of thing, and so they would try and tell the people that lived there that I was coming and blah blah blah, but it would never clue in. There was this one time where I literally walked in. It was 1 or 2 in the afternoon, and there was like one of the most ragingest parties I've ever seen in my life. Full on, like from the outside, it looked like nothing. I just knock on the door and it was just like smoke and chaos. And I had to go in and do this. And it's like, it was madness.
Podcast Junkies, episode 74. Welcome back. This is the podcaster's voice. This is the place where you come to listen to fantastic, fun, quirky conversations with some of the most interesting podcast hosts I can get in front of and I get to share some time with. And I bring those conversations to you week in, week out, every Monday, kind of, sort of, and hope you enjoy them. This week is no different. We get to speak to the one and only Jonny Nastor of Hack the Entrepreneur. But before we get to that, did you catch the one last week? That's the one where I spoke to my friend Esprit Devora of the We Are LA Tech and Hello Customer podcasts. And that one was done inside a car because that's the best place we could get some good sound. So it is all over the map. It is a lot of fun. We are laughing our asses off for half the show. And she's a good friend. So I think you're going to get to learn a little bit more about her. And I really appreciate Esprit taking the time and opening up on some topics that she hadn't spoken about in public before. So that was pretty cool of her. Jonny Nastor has been the host of Hack the Entrepreneur for almost 2 years. He just came out with his new book, which I highly encourage you to check out. It's a compilation of his conversations with fantastic entrepreneurs. And what he does is decipher how and really hack what it takes for them to have a successful business. So check out Hack the Entrepreneur. The book, it's literally came out a couple of weeks ago, and I believe it's only $3 on Amazon. So make sure you check that out. So we had a great conversation, dug a bit deeper into why the punk aesthetic is so important for Jonny, how he's improved over time with his interviews, and one of the little hacks he uses himself to ensure that his interviews are the best possible. So without further ado, Jonny Nastor of Hack the Entrepreneur.
Good.
Okay.
Sorry. Never done this before.
You've never been interviewed before?
I'm joking, yeah.
So Mr. Jonny Nastor, thank you so much for being a guest on Podcast Junkies.
Absolutely my pleasure. Absolutely my pleasure.
As per the rules I've been given on your podcast, I can call you Jonny, right?
Of course you can. Of course. I'd prefer. Jonathan, I'm not a big fan.
Is it on the birth certificate?
It's definitely on the birth certificate, yeah. And it's on like my mother and my wife's lips when I've not been good. That's when Jonathan comes out.
The Jonathan comes out when you haven't been good.
That's, yeah. And not in the good way either.
And do you have siblings?
Yeah, I have 2 sisters.
So are you in the middle or younger, older?
I'm the youngest, yeah. So I have 2 older sisters than me. So I got beat up a lot as a kid.
And do you, are they as entrepreneurial as you are?
No, not at all. Well, no. I'm going to say the middle sibling is kind of walks the line. She's more intrapreneurial, would you call her? So
yeah.
She just left her last job, and I think it was almost 5 years, longest she's ever been at a place, but she kind of moves from place to place, and she likes to kind of be able to take her own customers and stuff. And then my oldest sister is like one job like her whole life.
Yeah.
That's just, and she shook her head at me for years and years and years. And only recently is she just like, this is pretty interesting what you do. So, you know the game.
Yeah, there's always that inflection point where the people around you think like, this is like either, if it's one of many, then like, oh, this is the other thing you're starting now and good luck with that. And then you come back tail between your legs. You remember that thing I told you to get behind? Because this is the one I'm really gonna make a future with. Yeah, that didn't pan out. And it's a fun moment when it finally takes off and, either they start to see you and it's just a different universe, right? Because I have like people that I've worked with in my corporate life before, and then people that are my entrepreneurial podcast friends. And when I was in corporate life, I had no idea this even existed.
Yeah, exactly. You don't typically know that it exists. And it's, yeah, I've learned to kind of really take in the whole going from idea to idea. I like to call it project to project, and sort of like setting up like a portfolio type of businesses that have different like sources of income and that kind of, and just like my focus, they move. I don't have one business that I go to that office kind of thing. Like I have multiple things. And sometimes like right now during this like next couple of weeks, it's kind of overwhelming sometimes, but I do really enjoy it. And so like siblings and other people, they start to appreciate the fact that, wow, you actually do these different things. And it's not just, you're not just dabbling in each of them. You're actually going full bore in all of them somehow. And it's a different lifestyle, but it's fun. It's, brings us where we are.
I was reading a bit, a couple of months ago about how the actual works system was developed here in the United States. I think has something to do with, some German or Swedish influence. But anyways, this concept of like, we lived in a machine age and we had to have factory workers at a physical location between the hours of 9 to 5 so they could produce the amount of widgets that we needed in order to get done. And I feel like that model is at some point going to disintegrate, because I remember even when I was in a job, people would just sit at the desk until the 5 o'clock bell rang. And I'm like, what are you doing like before then? Don't you, or that you're literally waiting for the bell to ring? Were you not busy an hour before or 4 hours before? We all work at different speeds. And I think now that I'm more entrepreneurial, I feel that's more natural. We have our days, we wake up in the morning. Some people are morning people, some people are night people. I'm wondering for you, if you found that it's always been difficult to work within the confines of a set hourly structure.
I find it difficult to work within the confines of anything you put in front of me. How's that for an answer? Like, it's not just timing. It's not just place. It's literally, it's something I struggled with for years. And I've only recently sort of become confident in the fact that I can work how and when and where I want to and be successful doing it. But you're right. This whole like notion of like going because that's when like the factory is open and that's when you have to do it. It's an old concept that doesn't really exist anymore, or is going to exist less and less. That's why people don't get jobs now and just stay in that job for 50 years, right? Like they used to do. It's just not a thing that really happens anymore, unless you're older and you got in just in time, I guess, and that's what you want to do. But that's not what I want to do. And I just, I love that I can, like right now, like work my ass off totally and put in a good couple of weeks or a good couple of months of hard work. But then I can completely pull back if I want to. And I usually need to, and that's how I like to work. I don't really like to half-ass things. I like to kind of go all in and do the things I want to do, get them done, and then, okay, now it's done. Now let's pull back, kind of regroup, hang out with the family, maybe travel a bit, and then come back to it and do something else bigger and better.
So if you had to think back as to who instilled that that sense of individualism within you, is there someone that you can point to?
The sense of individualism...
Or that you can do it and you're in charge of, like, you're in charge of your own future.
Oh yeah, that would be my dad for sure. He's always run different businesses, and so there was my mom who like worked for the government and like the total like just that's the job till retirement, which was great. And then there was the like totally like different businesses and stuff, and so I was really comfortable from an early age, not knowing where the income was coming from and that kind of thing, and kind of moving from place to place. It wasn't abnormal for me. So it pushed me. I mean, he's like the very first page of my book, even is like, I have a quote from him, which is like, the only people who don't make mistakes are the ones that don't do anything. And that was like from a young age, like when I would screw something up and be all like scared. And then he was like, and that just means you're trying something, you're doing stuff. And that's kind of what I grew up in. So it really taught me just to go out and do stuff and not worry about making everything perfect and right, because it never is. Even after you've done it a lot, it's never perfect and right. It's just is. And you have to be cool with that. And you have to be comfortable with that. And you have to be willing to put that out there no matter what, and learn and grow and build off of it.
So you're a firm believer in fail fast, fail often?
Hopefully not. I'm a firm believer in never fail and just do everything awesomely, but it never works. So the fail fast thing, I mean,
it sounds bad when you say it, but I think the concept is, just learn very, very quickly what not to do.
Right. And there's no pressure on it, but just learn from it, right? It's only really a mistake if like you don't learn something from it. And that's how we learn stuff. That's how we figure things out. And you have to be comfortable with it, and you have to just be okay with it. And you have to learn to just wake up the next morning and realize that it's not really me that failed. It's not really like, it's just this idea or this way that I implemented this, but if I implement it in a different way, it might still work. So I guess I am a believer in the fail fast and the fail kind of just, and learn from it and fail hard, right? You have to, it's essential. There's no way to get good at anything. And I always like to be kind of pushing myself to try things I was never any good at, such as podcasting or even speaking into a microphone. I dreaded the sound of my voice up until like a year and a half ago. And now this is what I do almost all day, every day. So, which is crazy, right? But I pushed myself because I wanted to learn it. I wanted to figure it out. And now I know that whole like, oh, there's a certain amount of bad radio and all this. I didn't know those quotes and stuff at the time. I was just like, I'm just going to do this. I'm going to not listen to it back because it's going to freak me out. I'm not going to want to release it, but I'm just going to keep doing it. And eventually I'll get decent at it. Then maybe I'll get good, and hopefully I'll keep going, and I'll just actually be able to handle listening to myself.
Yeah,
which I can't do.
I don't think we ever get to a point where like, okay, this is it. This is perfect. I love the way I sound, and I'm ready for my own talk show, and I'll get the cameras out because I'm going to be like the next Jimmy Fallon or something like that. So before that, I know you mentioned, and from listening to you on your podcast and on the Showrunner, and having chatted with you a couple of times, I think previously you used to have a job where you checked houses for energy efficiency. Is that right?
I did. That was that was the final job before I went into the world of online business. And that was quasi-government. Like it was like a government program where they would pay people money for doing things. But yeah, I would go around, and I worked for a company, like quote unquote worked for them as like a contractor. So I got to kind of make my own schedule, and they were like, their office was like 10 hours drive from here. So I could like not answer my phone or my email if I wanted to. I had sort of the separateness from it, I guess, still. So it was still sort of my own thing, but yeah, it's dreadful. It's dreadful going out. I live up in Canada, right? So it's freezing cold right now. I'm looking outside. I'm like, I can't believe I used to work out in that, like measuring people's houses and taking pictures. But yeah, that's just one of the many wacky sort of jobs or businesses that I've run in my life on this sort of trip to where I am now.
So did that come out of just that was the job that came along at the moment, or is there an aspect of you that's actually interested in the environment, and that's why energy efficiency was something that was important to you?
Oh, I so wish I could say that. That would sound so nice. I totally do like care about global warming, that sort of thing, but that wasn't why I took the job. My dad is like a contractor, builds houses and that kind of thing, right? So I grew up in that. So I knew I had a background in construction and those kinds of things. And this new program with the government came, there was literally an ad in the paper they were looking for somebody who could run this end of it. So there would have to be some sales, which I feel really comfortable in and that I'm good at. And then it was also with houses. So I was like, I know houses, like I could build a house if I wanted to. So it just felt right. And then I kind of just ran with it. And it was a really big thing for, I think, almost 3 years, like just shy of 3 years. The government poured like hundreds of millions of dollars into it. And so it was just like unlimited amounts of work. And I would get paid per house that I went to, like hundreds of dollars, and it was like I would do like thousands of them in a year. It was amazing. And so it was like anything else I do, I just went all in on it and just like hammered it out super hard and took advantage of the moment that existed. It's funny, I actually got an email from the company yesterday because the government might be coming back with like a half-ass version of the program. They're trying to recruit us back and stuff, and there's people, I see them responding to it. It's like that's been like 4 or 5 years. Like you're gonna go, like, have you been waiting for this the whole time? Or it's shocking to me. But so it wasn't for. It was, I literally saw an opening in a market. I saw a place to make some good money by myself, sort of, and I ran with it. That's what I do.
I always have this morbid curiosity every time I get into like a Lyft, or I use mainly Lyft and not Uber. And I was like, oh, so what were you doing before? And do you have any interesting stories? So given that you've visited thousands of houses, is there anything that stands out as an awkward moment or an interesting visit when you went to one of these houses?
Yeah, there are. There's been some nudity. There's been lots of illegal drugs, like just weird, like, because lots of landlords would do this for like 50 houses that they own, kind of thing, and so they would try and tell the people that lived there that I was coming and blah blah blah, but it would never clue in. This one time where I literally walked in. It was 1 or 2 in the afternoon, and there was like one of the most ragingest parties I've ever seen in my life. Full on, like from the outside, it looked like nothing. I just knock on the door and it was just like smoke and chaos. And I had to go in and do this. And it's like, it was madness. They were super awesome and super nice and just like, so you're like government, right? But like, are you like affiliated with the cops and stuff? It's like, dude, no, I'm not. I just need to do my job. You're not paying. Can I just take some pictures? I'll try and not include some of this stuff in my photos. And that was crazy because I had to every house. You'd go before they do the renovation, and then you'd go back after, like months or a year later. Yeah. And I remember going back to that house, and it was just like there's some people hanging out like drunk, but it was like the middle of the afternoon when I went back. But I was so like all morning, I was like, oh my God, I gotta go back to that place again. Like, is it gonna be just like a roar, or else are all those people just dead and in jail? I don't know, but yeah. So that, and yeah, there was some weird nudity and just weird. People get really weird. People get really weird when someone's just coming into their house. Sometimes you can tell they've been like cleaning up for days and just preparing things because this government person's coming in, which I wasn't government, but it was for a government thing. And then there's the other people who it just doesn't matter. It's just like, whoa, who cares? You've been telling me for a month you're coming, but whatever. I'm not changing anything. I'm literally not putting clothes on at this point. So it was fun.
Yeah, it's fun. It says a lot about, how people are and their personalities. When you think, if I think of someone's coming home, my natural inclination is to at least try to clean up a little bit or something. But
some of the filth and weird, just like some places where you just like literally, I'm not taking my shoes off. There's no way I'm taking my shoes off, and just. Yeah, it's weird, man. I miss that part of it, even though it would exhaust me because I'm not really good with just like meeting new people all the time. But I kind of like got into the flow of like what I would say to people, and like I'd make a joke here about this and because sometimes they would like follow you around the whole time trying to take notes, and you're trying to act like you care too, but really you're just trying to get the job done in like 45 minutes. And then there's like the other ones who are just like let you in the door and just like go for it, man. Tell me when you're done, I'll pay you. And it's like nice. So. Yeah,
that's funny. Yeah, it's always interesting to act with people and get out of the house, and sometimes you wish you hadn't. But
exactly.
So, tell me how important music is in your life.
Oh, it's. I'm gonna say it's one of the most important things in my life. Just from like in my office here, listening to it nonstop, or on headphones when I'm writing or working, to. I have like 5 or 6 guitars strewn about the house. I play drums in 2 bands still. And I mean, my daughter takes piano. We haul a piano around with us everywhere we go. Like whenever we move houses, and it's huge. It's massive. It's been the one constant, I think, in my life since I was probably about 6 or 7 years old. And it's like that transcendental kind of thing. It's the one thing that always can take me out of myself and out of my own head. It's my meditation. Even though I play super loud, fast, abrasive, like rock and roll on drums, super just bashing like the hell out of it, sweating, but that's literally my meditation. Like 3 times a week, 2 hours at a time, solid, of literally not thinking about anything. If I think about anything, if anything from life or business or anything comes through my head, I screw up. I mess up the song. You have to just be thinking about nothing and just kind of go with it and just trust that you know it. And it works. And if I don't do that, like this past summer, my family, we went to Vancouver out on the West Coast for 3 months. We spent out there, but I didn't have any drums. So it really gets to me. I start to go kind of like squirrely. I need that. I need to I hit hard, I play hard, I like it. So yeah, there's not many things in this life that I could say that if I didn't have that, I would not be a happy person, but that's definitely one of them. That's huge. Music is, I love it, man.
You need to have your whiplash moments.
Yeah, exactly. exactly. Totally. So it's always been in me, man. I just dig it. I hope that I hope it never goes away.
Yeah. I've heard you, reference on occasion your love for punk music. So is it mostly punk or rock and roll or both, a little combination?
Yeah. I mean, to me, I'm not like an astute punk rocker in the sense that, I don't like to define it. Punk rock to me is an attitude more than like a speed or type of music, right? So there's things that I'll write sometimes. I wrote an article on Entrepreneur about punk rock and business, and I knew that it would push buttons because I mentioned some bands that I got some people like, dude, that's not punk rock. It's like, well, I'm the one who wrote it, so yes, it is actually. It's really about an attitude to me. It's about to me, it's where business now fits into my life. This whole DIY ethic of just do it yourself. If you want something done, if you want to create something, if you want to start something, then do it. There's no barriers for us anymore except for ourselves and the time we're willing to put into doing cool stuff. And that was directly learned during my high school formative years, playing in bands and putting on our own shows and making our own t-shirts and making our own stickers, recording our own albums, selling them on the street when we would travel places. It didn't make sense at the time that was business, quote unquote, but it's absolutely what brought me to where I am today. And so, yeah, I say I play punk rock. And it's funny because like now, again, to go back in the conversation where people from the outside like, oh, you're doing that now, and then you're doing that, and it doesn't matter. But then all of a sudden you hit this point where it's like, oh, wow, that's pretty cool. It's funny because since Hack the Entrepreneur and then now with my book, my friends, like people I play in bands with, now all of a sudden are like, whoa, like it's funny. They're like literally subscribing to my newsletter now. Really? Like, and just like all of a sudden they're like, this is really something you do. And then we were actually standing outside just before a jam a week or two ago. And one of them's like, so we play punk rock. I was reading on your site and you're like in a punk rock band. It's like, I've been trying to explain to people what we play because it's like, it's rock and roll, but it's noisy, but it's like, no, man, we play punk rock. And I was like, that's freaking hilarious. I've been doing this for years and now you guys are just all, and so now we're a punk rock band and that's what we call ourselves. So I'm going to say that. I mean, we're dads, we're not young anymore, and we're playing really noisy rock and roll that lots of young kids are like, it's too loud, it's too fast. So it's state of mind, man. It's just... It's
so funny when those worlds collide because I grew up a DJing, so I've been DJing for 20 plus years, and I used to work in JP Morgan Chase, and so I'd DJ at night, and then I'd tell my friends in the bank I DJ, and they'd give me this weird look like, you're a DJ? And then I'd be DJing at night and I'd be like, yeah, I work in a bank. They're like, you work in a bank?
It is funny like, when those two merge.
Yeah, never, and then they would never collide. Just like, I just can't see you. Like each one would say, I can't see you doing the other thing. So it's funny. But I picked up on on the punk aesthetic, from hearing you in conversations, but actually where I noticed it as well was when I saw you on the panel at Podcast Movement last year, and it was about sponsorships. So everyone was, dressed, however they were dressed, but you had your what do you have? Converse.
Yeah.
And you were just sitting there in your jeans and your Converse, and you're like, yeah, whatever, we can talk about whatever you want. But I was like, this guy's like kind of like doing his own thing, and we hadn't really met at that point in time. It just stood out, and I was like, oh, okay, I'd known at some point I was going to try to get you on the show, so I was like, I made a note. I was like, I want to ask him about that. So, I mean, it's the story of how you live your life. Like, just do what makes you feel comfortable. Like you said, this do-it-yourself aesthetic, and there has to be a bit of a nonconformist in you, right?
Just a bit, just a tiny bit. I mean, I hate to say it because my mom does listen to a lot of my interviews, but luckily I'm doing like a lot of them right now, so she probably won't. But she probably thought I was going to end up in jail or prison or something, because she was really, I think at times, really worried about me because I'm terrible. I'm terrible. I honestly think now that there's a term for it, which I don't think there was when I was a kid, but there's like something like active defiance syndrome or something, where you literally somebody tells me, even to this day, like, you have to do this. Instantly, it's like, well, I'm not doing it. And it's like, I know it's happening, but I can't, I just like, okay, John, no, just tell myself that I need to do this. And it's cool. But if somebody tells me and it's just like, I can't do it. Like, I literally, I can't look both ways across the street because you told me to, so I'm just going to go for it. And it's messed up, but I'm coming to terms with the fact that this is what it is. And it's always been like that. And I have a daughter who is all about the rules. She's like so into the rules. Oh, wow. And this is going to come back to bite me in the ass, but for the past 5 years, she'd be like, I'd be like, okay, let's just do this. And she's like, no, you can't do that. Like, see the sign that says that? It's like, do you know what rules are for? Rules are only meant to be broken. That's all it's for, right? And this was like totally fine and dandy, but now it's like, now it comes back and she'll do something. I'm like, what are you doing? She's like, well, what are rules for? It's like, oh. And it's like, as much as I love hearing you say that, no, my rules are different.
Yeah, because there's certain rules you probably shouldn't break.
Yeah, totally. But there's definitely I'm not good with rules. I like independence. It's how I actually ended my book. I wrote, I think the coolest line at the very last sentence that I wrote was that I like my businesses like I like my music, fast and independent, because I really do. I like small lifestyle businesses. I love people with laptops, just doing really cool stuff and changing their lives and other people's lives with it, and just completely making up their own rules. I think that's how life should be lived at this point. The internet gives us this time to do it. If I was born 10 years sooner, I wouldn't have been able to do this, because I honestly don't know what I would do with my life if I was that much older, because I wouldn't have had the internet the way I do now. Yeah, rules are meant to be broken. As much as that's going to bite you in the ass, they are. They really, really are. And you should now's the time to form them yourself, man, and just go for it.
What's interesting about that interaction with your daughter is because of what you've built right now and what you're continuing to build and wherever you're going to take your enterprises in the future, she's seeing this, right? And this is it's formative, and she's understanding, she's not seeing you leave the office with a briefcase in hand, and coming back at 7 p.m. It's a completely different environment that you're exposing her to, and I think I can't help but color what she's gonna think is possible. It's almost like you're showing her the potential of what you can do. If not only if you set your mind to it, but it's what you're passionate about. Do what you're passionate about. And I wonder if you do anything beyond just obviously by living an example, and which is how you're showing her, or you actually have discussions with her about that topic.
Yeah, she's been quote unquote starting businesses since she was 5 or 6. Meaning she's never actually, but literally we'd go somewhere and she would just on almost a daily basis, when I get older, I'm going to start a restaurant that is, and she'd name it, and it's only going to sell her 2 favorite things. And everyone's just going to have to deal with it. That's just the way it is. And so it's just always she doesn't look at businesses. She doesn't look at podcasts. She doesn't look at TV shows. She doesn't look at books as something that other people do. She looks at it as just somebody just did it, but it's not, they weren't handed this, right? Like she has this discussion, I've heard it like with her friends, and like they're watching like this YouTube channel and people are all like idolizing. And she's like, but this person just made it with their iPad, you know, like we have one of those, we could just make these. And they're like, no, you have to have a YouTube channel and stuff. It's like, well, yeah, but this like login sign up button in the corner of the top right, that's just how you do it. Like, and it's like, wow, it's true, right? And so it goes really through our whole lifestyle. So you're right that she doesn't see me come home with a briefcase at 7:00, but she does see me working oftentimes at 7:00. She does see me working at 10:00 when she goes to bed sometimes. But then often days, like we wake up together and we hang out till noon, and we don't. But then also on Saturdays and on Sundays. So actually, to go back a bit, 2 years ago, this is the year and a half into it now, right as Hackney Entrepreneur actually launched, she started homeschooling because 2 years prior to that, my wife had been able to quit her job and she's been staying home. And so it was like the only person who had to leave the house was my daughter. So we're just like, well, let's just keep her home. She was into it and she's loving it now. And so we don't, to go back even further in our conversation, that whole mentality of the warehouse is open at this time, so we work like this, and that structure, like straight from school through, that's just bred into us, that this is when you work, this is when you don't work, you wait till 5 and just punch out and go, right? And we really don't live that. Like there's rarely a day that we're not all, at least for 10 minutes, working on like a project that we're working on, whether that's Saturday or Sunday or Monday or Thursday or Friday. It doesn't matter. Like it kind of just blurs. We all just kind of work on things we want to work on when we want to work on them. We enjoy the things we do. We're not forced into any of it. And I hope that helps her. I hope that she takes that. She totally wants to go to high school, go back to school for high school, which is great. And then she wants to go to university at some point, which is totally cool. But I think that rather than telling her, because she knows that rules are just meant to be broken anyways, we're just living. This is the way we live life. There's a real blur, more of a mesh between like life and business for me. Life and business are two of the same. I love the whole thing of just lifestyle and living it the way I want to. Working my ass off on projects when I want to, pulling back when I want, packing up all of us our laptops and our backpacks and getting on a plane and heading to the other side of the world when we want. But yeah, my daughter, she podcasted. She had a show for 15 episodes. She's just finishing up like writing her second novel. It's cool, right? It's cool. Just things. It's just things we do. I wish that I would have realized that like way sooner. That you can that you're really the only person, that you're the biggest hurdle for yourself is you just getting out of your own way and just being like, it's all right if it sucks. I just have to do it and it'll get better. So I hope that we can put that forth to her.
So with the last official job that you had visiting houses for energy efficiency, and you touched upon it, your daughter starting the podcast, the link there was that you got the idea for that at a conference you went to in the Philippines.
Yes.
So talk a little bit about it's not like going to the local YMCA for a workshop on how to start a business. It's a little bit more of an investment than that. So talk about why you felt that was the moment for you, and this was the one that you probably should be at.
So I had a podcast before that, and it hadn't actually officially ended. Then 2 years ago, almost now, we went to the Philippines. We went to Asia for almost 3 months, I think, and spent the winter there. And the finale of it was going to Chris Ducker's first tropical think tank. And it was really, really small. There was only 25 of us total at that point, and there was a lot of podcasters. So Pat Flynn was there, John Lee Dumas was there. And we masterminded a lot. And there was this idea that for me, I had been behind my business and for a long time where I'd created stuff, but I was not sort of the face of it. I wanted to start speaking. I wanted to start writing. I wanted to start doing things. And I had a podcast with somebody locally in my hometown that just kind of got me going because he knew the technical side, but I had the content. I knew it was going to be terrible. I mean, his job of it was amazing, but I was just like, into a microphone, which I feel like I am right now too. But I really wanted to try something new, and I didn't know how to go about doing that. So we started that conversation, and then Pat Flynn actually met my daughter, and so they started talking about a podcast, and then John Lee Dumas started in with her, and then Pat offered to buy her this whole setup that I'm speaking through right now. So it was this idea in the back of my head, and I had no idea where it was going to go or what I was going to do with it. So we got home and I sat on it sort of for a few months. Then I had a lot of time in my business where I literally just had months off and I didn't have to do anything. So I just decided to start, and that was it. I needed to just start. I was going to start with a partner who I met in the Philippines. He was there, but he lived in Australia. Brilliant guy. Amazing with ideas, terrible with execution. He came up with the name over some Skype calls. I was just walking with my dog and we were figuring this all out. He came up with like sort of an idea of like a hack and how we could, all this brilliant stuff. And then I got back from the walk. I checked like hacktheentrepreneur.com is like available. Doesn't make any sense. But okay. And so I gave him like 3 little jobs to do and he didn't get back to me. And like 7 days later, he didn't get back to me. So I just emailed him like, dude, I got to do this. I feel this for some reason. This is right. I have to do this and I'm doing it myself. Can I keep the name? Have your blessing? He's like, yep. And then I totally changed the way it was going to work. But I literally just started emailing people on a Monday. I was going to interview. I had 30 people that I really, really wanted to talk to. I've wanted to talk to about business for a long time. I figured they wouldn't talk to me unless I was recording it for a podcast. And on a Monday, I sent out, I think, 3 or 5 emails. And by Thursday, I interviewed 2 people. I had never interviewed anybody in my life. And I spent, that was early July of 2014. And at that time, I was like, September 5th, I'm launching. And so I just spent 2 months getting everything ready, figuring out the branding, figuring out the website, figuring out how I was going to hit the market, what I was going to do for a format. I recorded 22 complete episodes, and then I hit it September 5th and just went for it. And the rest, they say, is history.
I wonder if you could put yourself back in those 2 year ago shoes. And it sounded like there was a lot of moving parts, and it sounded like you were doing a lot of things that you've never done before. And I'm wondering if you could explain your mindset at the time and what gave you the cojones to believe that this is something that was possible.
So at the time, I didn't realize it. I just did this exact same thing with my book. I honestly never even called myself a writer. But in late September 28th, actually, I sent the first email about it and decided on a launch date, December 14th. And I gave myself a really quick time and just went for it. But with the podcast, the way I did it, I've realized now after talking to like 200 really smart entrepreneurs, I've realized, I can't remember exactly who said it, but he's in my book. And it's exactly how I felt. I felt like I was creating the next best thing. When I can still exactly remember being on that walk with my dog, talking over Skype to my friend Gabriel, brilliant dude. And he said, hack the entrepreneur. And then he's like, because imagine when you're emailing the guest and it's just the subject line that they're live and it's just like, you've been hacked. He's like, everyone. I'm like, wow. Smart dude, right? And then there was just something as I started, and I had podcasted before, but it was terrible. I didn't know what to do, but I had this idea of like old time radio where everything's like sound effects and noises and everything's going to be in the exact sort of same places every single time. So you get this feeling. I was like, it feels like something I'm missing in the market, and I'm making this for myself. There's a lot of business shows, a lot of interview for entrepreneur shows, but none of them are exactly what I want at all. And as I was going through that process of that month, even though I had never interviewed anybody before, I worked really hard with my mastermind group and like questions and figuring things out. And I really, truly felt like I was creating the next best thing. I felt like as I launched and like that first 8 weeks, when I literally went from 0 audience to like 50,000 or like 70,000 or something downloads from literally, actually the first month I got 2,700 downloads the first 4 weeks. Then the next one I got like 50 something thousand. it wasn't surprising to me. It made perfect sense. And it's weird because it only makes sense looking back on it, but none of it came as a surprise. And I've noticed now, and just from talking to other people, that this is typically how it works when a business or when an idea you create, when you create something out of nothing and it doesn't feel forced, or it feels like the next best thing, or like you truly honestly believe that this is the thing. That's typically when it works. And I can't tell you how to find that. But when I look back on the other podcasts, when I look back on other businesses I've created, I can almost exactly get that feeling in my stomach where we're launching, we're getting ready. This is awesome. This is great. I've never done it. All the same, except for the fact that there's this feeling in my stomach that something's just off. It's just not quite right. It's not as good as it could be for some reason. It's not hitting like either congruency with like who I am or else with the market. I actually don't know how to exactly explain it, but nothing that, although I could never assume any of the stuff that has happened with Hack the Entrepreneur, from launching to building an audience to like almost 2 million downloads to working with Copy Blogger, I could never have imagined any of that stuff happening, but none of it was a surprise when it happened in a really weird way. I'm not spiritual. I'm not any of that. I just literally think that you have to be creating something that you believe can be that next best thing, or else you definitely will not be.
The word that stood out there was congruency, and taking aside all the spirituality aspects of it, I think what you're speaking to is putting all your efforts behind something that you feel is in alignment with what you know that you're capable of, and what you know is a good idea, because you have the foresight to understand where you can take it, and I think you were spot on with all those decisions, because obviously you've had tremendous success with the podcast. And so it's almost a reminder to the listener to listen or feel out whatever, wherever your internal alarm clocks are for those sorts of things. And you probably had some of those going off as you were thinking through these things. I mean, as you're describing it, I'm getting excited by your enthusiasm. And, we've all been in those moments when we have that aha moments, whatever you call it. So, kudos to you for obviously following through on it. But I think it's important, to, as a piece of advice in general, to be aware of when those happen and sort of ride that to its conclusion.
Yeah. And I guess that's the part that I skipped sort of. So I'm going to say around week 8 to 9. So right as New and Noteworthy ended, I remember lying on the couch and watching like a Gary V, Ask Gary, whatever video podcast that had launched right around the time of mine. And it was weird. It was like it was directed at me, although I didn't ask the question, but he said that it doesn't matter if you're starting a blog right now, a YouTube channel, a podcast, no matter what it is right now, if you have this like tremendous that you can reach everybody and anybody. And if you feel ever that what you are creating, you feel that sort of spark in you that this might be the thing, he's like, you have to go all in. It's your duty to go all in. If you don't go all into it right now, all you're going to have is regret to look back on. And please do not come to me in 6 months. Do not come to me in a year. Do not come to me in 5 years and say, how do you do this, Gary? Because that's how you do it. We will all do something or many things, but you have to, like you said, you have to be in tune to it and figure it out. But when you feel that spark, that sort of just like, this might be it. And that was when I kind of dropped the ball on like Velocity Page and the business. I'm still running it and now, but so I picked it back up. But at that point, I went from 2 episodes to 3 a week. And I said, I'm going to give this 12 months. I'm going to go all in as hard as I can on this because life's too short. And I don't want to look back 1 year, 5 years from now and be like, I wonder what I could have done with that. I literally want to know exactly how far that I can take Hack the Entrepreneur. And then there's like this, to go back to my book, since I am selling a book, but there's my favorite quote in here now is by Oren Klaff. And he says that an entrepreneur doesn't quit when he's tired. He quits when he's done. And that to me is exactly it. You can't, because there's been numerous times where I've hit the dip and like, it's not all been roses. Don't like, let me kid you in any way. There's been times where if I was any way smarter than I am, I would have quit numerous times. But the other side is always huge and big, and you need to push through there. And I never, ever once quit when I was done. I was in this office at like 2:30 last night and back up this morning at 8:30 to start another interview, because that's what I want to do right now. And rather than quit when I was tired, I'm only going to quit when I'm done. And I want to know what done is for this show, because that spark is there. And we've all created these things that you get that, but you're either, like you said, not in tune to it, and you need to learn to be, or else you just ignore it and you think that you should quit when you're tired. And then you just have to look back on it and always wonder what you could have done. And that to me is probably the worst feeling ever.
That's fantastic advice. And you've been in a unique position because of the nature of your show to speak to some just amazing entrepreneurs, right? And you get some fantastic advice. And I'm sure there's been some times when you're in the middle of a conversation and they're saying something, and you can apply that to your own business.
Yeah, well, that was the whole, it was a selfish endeavor. I had 30 people that I wanted to talk to about business, but I wouldn't be able to get them on unless I recorded it, and I wouldn't be able to afford to have them as coaches. So I just wanted to talk to these people. And then it turned into something more than that. And I think because, going back to congruency, because these were conversations that I really, really, truly was vested in. I wanted to have them. I was so excited. Like, I run around my office still when I get off of an interview. I love it. I love talking business. I love talking with people that are out there doing big, cool things, that are creating something out of nothing, no matter what that something is, whether it's art or it's commerce. I absolutely love it. And so you have to have that, right? And you can't fake it. So if you are trying to find a show that's going to do that for you, you have to find the thing that you really are that truly passionate about. It can't be faked, at least not in a way that will get you anywhere, because that spark will never happen, because it just has to be you, right? I mean, that's why I talk about the whole punk rock me and everything. It's something that I'd never done before, actually, until Hack the Entrepreneur. But it was just me. It was like, this was it. This is what I was going for. And it's the one time that it's really, really, really worked. But that's it, man.
No, I find that time and time again, like when you hear stories of people who've had success, it's the moment when they just kind of let all the bullshit go and just say, look, I've got many layers to who I am as a person, and you're going to hear them all in my journey. And I've had failures, and I've got hobbies, I've got things I'm interested in, and I'm just a well-rounded person, and I need to bring these all to bear now so that I can have success in this. And it sounds like when you did that, that's when you really noticed that things started clicking for you. Yeah.
I wouldn't go as far as to say that I'm well-rounded, but I haven't been institutionalized yet.
Okay. That's a good sign. So as the show grew in popularity, you began another show, which is The Showrunner. And yep. I'm wondering if you could tell the story of you meeting Jerod Morris.
So of that first 30 people, again, Brian Clark, founder and CEO of Copyblogger Media at the time, now Rainmaker Digital, he was on that list. So in July, I had emailed him. I've learned now that he's worse at email than I am. And so this was all fine and stuff. And so I launched the show. In January sometime, we had followed each other on Twitter now and stuff. And I remember the day, he followed me on Twitter. It's like, oh my God, this is crazy. But sometime in January, he literally DM'd me on Twitter. He's like, I hate to be that guy, but I feel bad that you haven't asked me to be on your show. And I'm like, dude, I've never talked to him before. I'm like, dude, don't even start this with me. And so I brought up the email. I was like, I emailed you in July. You completely ignored me. And I was shattered. So I didn't even respond. He's like, ouch. Yeah, I missed that one totally. So had him on the show. We had a great conversation for half an hour. And it was one of those things where I've I think 3 times in the 200 people that I've just really hit it off with the person on like a personal level. And so literally I stop hitting record. I'm like, that was awesome. And then he's like, okay, we're starting a podcast network. Nobody knows about this, but next month we're starting a podcast network. It's going to be all Copy Blogger shows, but I would like your show to be on it. And I just remember sitting here and being like, I think that's supposed to be a question, but it's really like there's not really an answer besides yes, of course. And so then it was like, that's cool. He's like, so he explained it and he's like, okay, I'll get some more information back to you. And then like a week or 2 later, then he like calls me up. I'm like, whoa, Brian Clark. It actually says it on my phone. It's just, sorry, I've been a fan for a long time. And I'm glad he doesn't listen to these too. But then he just called me up and he was like, just like shooting the shit. And then he's like, have you ever thought of starting a podcasting course? No, I haven't. Do you want to think about it? And like, sure. And he's like, because what you've done and created is really, really cool. And it'd be cool. We get asked it all the time. I'm like, actually, it's funny because I get asked it a lot by my audience, which I never would have thought that. But it kind of makes sense. And he's like, because we've been asked it a lot. And then there's this guy, Jerod Morris, who I don't know who Jerod Morris is at all. I've never even heard of him at this point. And so he's like, I'm going to introduce you because he's done some cool stuff with podcasting. I think you guys would really get along and work well together. And it was literally, then it was like, he's like, I'll do that right now. And so like 3 days later, I messaged him on Twitter. I'm like, so that right now about that email, you still haven't sent that. He's like, oh geez. So literally like 3 minutes later, Jerod, this is John, meet John, Jerod, you guys should make a course together. And that was it.
Wow.
And then it was like, Jerod and I got on a call and it's like, all right, so we figure out like some dates and stuff. And then as Brian, you start to realize that he is bad with email, but then when he does email you, if you email him like a giant thing with all these questions, it's literally like, yes, no, yes, yes, yes. And that's it. And it's like, does he hate me now or what is it? But he was just like, he had a meeting with Jerod off like away from me. And then he was just like the contract or whatever you want to call it for starting was just literally to me. He was just like, yep, Jerod told me, let's do it. And that was it. Never talked to him. We started a show. Then we created a course, then we launched a course. And then I met him and said hi to him and stuff at the conference that they put on in like April, like literally like 3 or 4 days after the course, the first launch closed, we went to the conference and that was it. No contracts, no anything. I had never met Jerod until I met him there. I think we had one Skype call and a whole bunch of back and forth emails before we recorded our first episode. He had never created a course. I had never created a course. And we just ran with it. And yeah, episode 43, we recorded it today and the course is relaunching in a couple of weeks. It's crazy. But Brian's really, really good at, as a CEO, obviously putting the right people together. Like I couldn't work with most people, but Jerod and I just really hit it off.
Yeah, that's one of the interesting things that stand out about the show, and it's on my it's in my podcasting section in Overcast. So of all the podcasts about podcasting, Showrunner FM, gotta have it. Gotta make sure I listen to it every. You probably see my comments every now and then on Twitter. And Overcast is great because you can pick certain points and like listen to what they said here, and then you just tweet about it.
That is really cool,
which is cool. But what's I really love is. And maybe this is kudos to Brian because you guys have an amazing chemistry together. You fit well. You guys have it's just the perfect mix. I think what you look for, and when you have 2 podcast hosts that they complement each other and then they can have fun with each other, and they sound like they've been doing it for a while, and which is the feeling that I get when I listen to your show.
Oh, thanks. And I know people say like, wow, you sound like you guys like went to high school together and stuff. Like, I have no idea. I didn't know how to spell his name for the first 3 months. I would spell it with 2 R's and then like it was terrible, but something happened. We would just hit record and it was just fun. And we're different enough that it made like, I think a good sort of dynamic.
Very cool. So yeah, I highly recommend that if you're not listening to it, check out Showrunner FM. And I'll have links to all those in the show notes. A couple more questions. You do such a fantastic job with your guests, and I'm wondering if you would be able to identify what your differentiating skill is when it comes to interviewing.
Cheating. I know nobody else can see this, but you can. But I created this PDF document that allows me, and even as we're talking, you'll see me looking down. I take notes like I'm kind of insane. I don't do this normally in like everyday life. I'm just terrible with notes, but I had to create this interview sheet. I called it. It's a PDF. And so I have like the person's name, the business, what they've been up to, and any resources they mention. And I'm constantly taking notes of what they say so that I can then go back to what they said. So I find with podcasts, because it's audio, you have to keep the person engaged. I can stay engaged in the conversation, but if they're doing something else or they're distracted or anything, or we lose interest, that it loses something. And I don't allow enough time, because I have a short show. I don't allow enough time so that we can take 10 minutes to wander too far where he's not really paying attention or she isn't, and then to try and bring her back. We have to be kind of on all the time. So I keep notes, and I'll bring back like, and so like, Harry, when you said this, and I'll quote exactly what, and then it's like, oh, like you're saying their name, which obviously like psychologically people love it. It brings them back into the conversation, but also like, wow, like you were really listening to that. It's like, actually, no, I take notes. I have no idea what you said if I didn't write it down, because I'm really bad at that. Like I'm the guy that literally, Harry, I'll meet you at a conference and we'll shake hands and you'll be like, hi, I'm, and I'll be like, I don't even know what he said for his name. I've already forgotten. Like I literally didn't listen for some reason to what his name was. That's horrible. Now it's like, I should start a podcast. That's what I should do, right? So I had to cheat. So I have a Pages. I'm on Mac, so I had to I have a Pages document in front of me that has questions. So I have like every first sort of question. There's like 4 questions I try and get to, and then I let it wander, but I bring it back to, okay, now let's go back to here. And so that made me comfortable that I could cheat and pay attention to what they were saying and not have to worry that if they stop right now talking, it's like, I don't have to be like, oh, what am I going to say? Either I've already written down a question as they're talking, or I have one in front of me. And that's literally it, man. It's just really bringing the person back. You do it with video. It's great. It's really, really, really smart, because it helps with that engagement. Yeah. But when it's just audio, I've found people, especially, I don't know if it's just because of the market I'm in. So I'm in entrepreneurship and business. So people are really busy, and I'm in a market and people say, well, it's easy for you because they're all do interviews. And it's like, it's true. They do a ton of interviews. And so sometimes they'll want to just answer like that. They think that you asked that question because they've been asked it a ton of times. It's like, well, no. So you got to like, be like, okay, Harry, so when you said this was your one thing, now I want to know about, and it's like, whoa, he's like really, so it works. Right. But it's literally just cheating, man. Cause I literally shake your hand and it's like, I am. And so, I mean, you're going to see me walking around conferences now with like my interview. What was your name again? Okay, thank you. But I try and not show it, and I try and not make it obvious and I think, well, I know that I don't make it obvious because people like just can't, they're like, how do you stay so engaged? How do you remember all this stuff? It's just like, I literally have beside me on the floor as I go through them. These are all old ones as they've been released. This is just like chicken scratch notes, and that's just cheat, man. I cheat my whole way through life. That's what I do.
And what's great about that is that listeners have asked you for copies of your chicken scratch.
Yeah, they have, totally. That was like a lead magnet, as they say, for a while till I got totally swamped. But and also podcasters, if you would want a PDF like this, by all means, hit me at Twitter. Or just John at Hack the Entrepreneur. I can send you this and you can just edit the PDF to work for you. But this took me almost a year of kind of refining it. And there's some parts like hacks and stuff that are specific to my show, but it'll give you a starting point anyways if you want to do something like that. Works for me.
Very, very cool advice. What's one thing you've changed your mind about recently?
I've changed my mind about the fact that I should change my mind. I said this actually, I think on the showrunner when we did our New Year's one, and Jerod asked me what my New Year's resolutions were. And I was like, well, first of all, I don't like New Year's resolutions, just because I wanted to be that way with him. But then, I said that I was going to work as hard as I could to contradict myself from previous times. And I don't mean that in like a smart ass kind of way. I answered it smart ass to be funny, but I want to do it to force myself to question what I think, how I sort of react to the world, just in general, personally and in business. I want to grow and I want to be better every single day, at least a little bit than I was yesterday, at least at some aspect of my life. And I've realized that involves me needing to change and needing to contradict maybe what I said yesterday or what I thought yesterday or what I did yesterday. I love books. I love podcasts. I love recording albums because it shows me a fixed point in time of how John Nastor is. But I hope that if I listen to a podcast tomorrow that I recorded today, that I disagree with something that I said because I've moved somehow in a different way. Not necessarily always better, but different and just fluid and moving towards something else. I don't want to be sort of stagnant, and I think it's boring. But still to this day, my parents will be like, well, John, he's never wrong. That was always my thing. I was like, I'm never wrong. This is like how I think, and this is how it's going to be. And now I completely disagree with that. And it's like, I want to be wrong at things and learn and grow and be just that 1% better at something every single day. And that involves contradicting what I just said. Now I never want to be wrong.
Was it wrong is the new right or something?
Yeah, no, I don't think that I could ever be right now and be the same right in a year or 2 years or 3 years or 4 years. Life changes, people change, things happen. You just got to go with it and enjoy it, man. It's a crazy ride we're on.
It's a fantastic way to wrap this up, and just a reminder that we need to constantly be shedding our own skin.
Totally.
So, yeah, thanks for that. So what's the... Thanks for the time, by the way.
Absolutely, my pleasure, man. It's been a blast.
I like this.
We should do this sometime and record it.
Nah, who'd want to listen to this? So what's the best place for folks to track you down?
Check out Hack the Entrepreneur if you haven't. I think you might really dig it. Again, you can email me, Johnny, any way you want to spell it, at Hack the Entrepreneur, or else I'm always on Twitter, just at John Nastor, JONNASTOR. And I have a book. Can I push the book?
Of course.
htebook.com, or just go to your local Amazon.com website. And it's not local, but and buy it. It's like $3. It's really good. I think you'll dig it.
Yeah. Definitely run, don't walk to your nearest Amazon.com browser and pick it up. It's if this episode is any indication of just how entertaining that book will be, then it's a shame you guys don't have it in your hands already.
Exactly.
Thanks again, John. Have a fantastic week.
Oh, you too, man. It's been my pleasure.
Take care.
Hope you enjoyed that. Johnny is nothing if not outspoken, and he definitely exemplifies that DIY aesthetic that he was referring to during our conversation. And it's one of the reasons why I wanted him on. I like I mentioned in the interview, I saw him at Podcast Movement, and I said, this guy's just chilling in his Converse. And it's kind of like I don't really care what people think of me attitude. And I knew at some point I was going to have him on, and I'm glad to have gotten to know him a little bit better by participating in some of the blabs with Jerod Morris on Showrunner. And he's funny guy, and what you see is what you get. So I really like that he's super authentic, and I appreciated the time he took to spend with this conversation with us, and hope you enjoyed it. So remember, intro and outro music is composed by Cedar and Soil. Check out cedarandsoil.com. Thank you so much, George, for putting that together, and I encourage folks to check him out if you haven't done so already. We're a proud member of Podcastica as well, and go check out the new shows at podcastica.com. The folks at Walking Deadcast are doing a review of movies recently because the show is on hold for the new season. And I was on an episode recently where we reviewed the movie Old Boy. So I had a good time with Jason and with Jenny, his wife, on the show, and I think this week they're doing The Exorcist. So check out those shows. We've got a couple of new shows possibly in the works, so fingers crossed. We'll be introducing some new members of the Podcastica family pretty soon. So remember, 3 things you need to do to support the show. First, download, and most importantly, subscribe. It's the most important thing you can do. And it signals that to me and to us and to everyone else that you're a part of the podcast Junkies crew. Don't forget to look us up on Facebook. We have a super secret Facebook page that if you type in podcast Junkies, you'll find and see where I post my videos occasionally of some behind the scenes stuff that's going on with the episode. So don't forget to do that. Second, tell friends. Tell friends that you're enjoying the show. Share it with them on Twitter. Share it with them on Facebook. And if you need to hijack some phones and subscribe on my behalf, then I am deputizing you in that role. So feel free. Do as you will. Last but not least, if you really love the show, hop on over to iTunes and then leave a rating and review. I know that I've been getting caught up on mine, and as a podcaster and knowing the importance of it, even I have trouble sometimes remembering. So I make it a point every Friday to get on out there and put some reviews in for some of my good friends and some new shows I've found as a result of my constant search for entertaining, fun, and engaging hosts. So do that if you get a chance. That's highly appreciated. Appreciated. Is that the word? How about the retention hashtag? This week it's going to be Hack Jonny. And that's Johnny with no H. So let's do Hack, HACK, JONNY. So it's 2 N's in there. HACK, JONNY, hashtag. And let John and myself know, podcast_junkies, that you made it this far and that you enjoyed our conversation and that you're part of the Cool Kids Club. Thanks so much, my fellow podcast junkies. I really enjoy having these conversations with you. I know I'm beating a dead horse, so I'll sign off for now. Have a fantastic week, and shoot me some feedback when you get a chance. Let me know what you guys are up to. Oh, lastly, don't forget the support of the show is now directed at the affiliates page. If you find something that's of interest to you with the links to Amazon and some of the other services that we provide, that's an interesting way. You can see what we have available and some of the new hosting packages that we've set up and connected with. Bluehost for your web hosting, WP Engine if you want to take it to the next level. And we've recently signed up as a host for Libsyn, so use promo code PJHOST as well for any and all of those. But check out the full link, the full list at podcastjunkies.com/affiliates. Take care.